In 1947, after Kenneth Arnold reported a group of flying saucers to the media, a slew of other reports and encounters began rolling in. You have probably heard some of their stories before, but these are ours.
When you bring up the subject of UFOs or aliens, sometimes they are met with snickers or downright rejection. Before my little paranormal encounter in the Blueberry Plains in Kennebunk, my friends and I used to go there to smoke up. One such encounter happened on one of these nights. Myself and a friend pulled over to the side of the dirt road that ran right through the plains. As we were about to play a number, my friend noticed a strange multicolored light dancing in the sky, just above the tree line. Once we started to pay this some attention, it was doing circles and even looked like it was doing figure eights. It started to move away slowly, like it was moving down Route 99. We jumped in my Oldsmobile and took off after it. My car at the time was no slouch. It was pretty strong. Route 99 ended at Route 109, and then I ran right into the airport. I was pushing my car hard, and when we came to the end of 99, the craft we were trying to follow stopped right over the airport. It stayed there, hovering, for what seemed like 10 or 15 seconds. Then it shot straight up into the sky, and it was gone. This story is important because it lends credence to what came after. This was my first experience. It got me interested into the ultimate question. Throughout the rest of my life, I researched. I read books, watched TV shows and movies. Once the internet became a thing, I was able to reach out online for more information. Now we can fast forward to this past June 2015, a beautiful summer night. I was outside having a conversation with my neighbor, who lives across the street from me. He and I have known each other since the late 90s, and our conversation eventually turned to UFOs, and it got deep. He began to tell me about his connections on the deep web. Some of the information he relayed to me was heavy, to say the least. And as much of a believer as I am, some of the things he told me I had a hard time trying to comprehend. Now at this moment, we both turned and looked to the end of our street. A craft moved slowly enough across the sky for us to get a good look at it, but low enough for us to know it wasn't any type of human-made aircraft. I used to live close to the airport. I've seen just about every type of commercial, private, and military style of aircraft, and this was none of it. Picture a school bus with two 1 million watt candle spotlights at the bottom of it, facing up, spraying light out of a bunch of windows. As it passed the crop of trees that covered the end of my street, it was gone. And after that, it was like the sky erupted. Looking above us, there were lights in the sky. They would blink while moving, and then disappear, and then reappear within a sizable distance. I went into the house, not sure what to think. Since that night, in the western night sky, there is a light, like a bright star. Some nights it's there, some nights it's not. I can understand how this sounds. It's easy to say this is all bullshit. Anyone can believe what they want, but I know it's true. I lived it. I never saw any little gray men, and I wasn't abducted. And as I write this, I'm looking out of my front window, staring at it, and it feels like it's staring back at me.
Hello, this is Lakaya, and I would like to tell you about my one and only personal UFO encounter. When I was a child, I had a fascination with anything having to do with the moon, the the stars, and just the universe in general. I would stare at the nighttime sky every night out of my bedroom window. For hours at a time, I would just sit there mesmerized by the twinkling of thousands of tiny white dots on this big, vast blanket of darkness. Summertime was always my favorite time to sky watch. Because I was young and lived with my grandparents, my grandfather was the one that would encourage my love of the night and all the things that came with it. During the summer, my grandfather and I would drag out 2 old metal chairs into the middle of the backyard and just lay in them all night stargazing. The best times were when we were able to watch the meteor showers. But there was that one summer that still sticks with me to this day. I was around the age of 10, an age to where I still had a childlike view of the world and to where I viewed everything and anything as magical. The month was July, and it was hot. We had dragged the 2 metal lounge chairs into the middle of the backyard right before the sun had set that day. We laid there for a while watching the sky turn dark and the stars making their appearance. And then I seen the first meteorite of the night move across the sky, and then the next, and then the next. We laid there in silence just watching as the meteor shower started to peak. Then, as if it was going to land right above us, a meteor lit up the sky in various hues of green, and what seemed like right above our heads. I squealed and jumped out of my chair with excitement and ran over to the edge of the property, where I could have sworn it had landed. I scanned the area in excitement but seen nothing. Disappointed, I ran back over to my chair beside my grandfather. We continued to watch the sky for more meteors. A few minutes passed as we sat in complete silence. The next thing I knew, we were covered in a circle of bright white light. The light was so bright that I had to cover my eyes while I looked over to my right, trying to see my grandfather's face. I was scared. My grandfather had stood up by that time and was staring straight into the beam of light right above our heads. He reached over and snatched me out of my chair and ran for the back door of the house as fast as he could. The back door led into the kitchen, where there were 2 large windows facing out into the backyard. With me still in his arms, my grandfather slammed the back door shut, bolted it, and ran over to the first window. We peered out into the backyard and watched as the beam of bright white light slowly moved towards the house, following the path that we had just ran. We both leaned into the window and followed the beam of light back up into the sky with our eyes. The only thing that I could see was a large black mass blocking all the stars in the sky. And then nothing. The beam of light was gone, as was the large black object in the sky. My grandfather stood there by the window with me still in his arms, and for a while, before he finally took a long, deep breath, turned on his heels and carried me to my bed.
So a while back, maybe like 2 years ago or so, I happened to see this manifestation in the sky. And for some odd reason, I happen to think of it more and more right now. Even though so much time has passed, that night changed me in a way. I always believed in something more beyond the stars, but this really solidified my belief. That night, my friend told me how you can see a meteor shower, and I stared at the skies hoping to see 1 or 2, even though I live in the city, and it's unlikely for me to see it due to city lights and all. But I've seen something else. Among the stars, there was one single star shining brighter than the others, like way beyond the others. At first, I thought it was an airplane, because my city is an hour away from the nearest airport. But then, I noticed how it's not moving at all. At first, but then it moved like a man or no airplane could. As far as I know, no airplanes can move in reverse. My sister was on the same floor as I, and so I quickly called her and asked her if she sees the same thing. The bright star-like object moving in an odd pattern at angles no aircraft could. And suddenly, like you switched it off, it started to go dim. More and more, and it was gone. Whatever it is, I am sure it's not a drone or anything like that, because of the altitude it was. And my sister saw it too, so I don't think I could have imagined it.
2 years ago, my brother and I were out fishing in Honey Island Swamp. Theo, who fancies himself a professional fisherman, had this bright idea that we should stay out after dark. Now, being in the swamps at night is not really a pleasant thing. My brother did so much whining and complaining, I decided it'd be best if I just appease him. We hang out a few extra hours and then head in. His decision to play around in the swamps at night is exactly how we had our UFO encounter. To paint a picture for you, we were in this small cove and casting our lines out into the water ahead of us. I was positioned at the rear of the boat, and Theo right ahead of me about 3 feet. To right and left of us was kind of a mixture of solid land, marsh, and a number of trees. One thing I'll never forget about that night too is the mosquitoes, man. The size of your pinky fingernail. Big mosquitoes. And the insect repellent just wasn't working. But anyway, it gets to be about 8:30. My brother had just cast his line and he got a bite. Now as he's reeling his fish in, I begin to notice that all the sounds in the swamp start to die down. Then we begin to hear this humming sound. But not like a bird. It was more like metal vibrating. It became louder and louder until it was deafening. Then the fish began to jump up and splash around in the water, all at the same time. My brother and I looked at each other like, what the fuck is going on? Scared, I tried to start the engine, but it was dead. And I don't mean dead like it ran out of gas. I mean dead like no electricity at all was on the boat. What I started feeling at this moment, just saying you're scared doesn't describe it. I was terrified. And although my brother was just 3 feet away from me in this boat, I felt helpless. It was at that moment when I began to hear rustling in the bushes coming from behind me. I was too scared to turn around to see what it was. But the look on Theo's face and how wide his eyes were open let me know that definitely something was behind me. That's when he scrambled through the boat, reaching down and grabbing his 9mm pistol, stood up, and started firing shots right above my head. Then, just as suddenly as all the activity started, it stopped. My brother and I were completely shocked. For a second, we didn't know what to do. A few minutes later, I was able to get the boat to start, and we got the hell out of there. When I felt safe, I asked him, Theo, what were you shooting at? And my brother, who's about as straight-laced as anyone I've ever met in my life, said he didn't know. He just saw these 2 glowing yellow eyes that were 10 feet above the ground. We haven't been back to Honey Island Swamp since. We don't go to the shooting range, we won't go hunting, nor will we go fishing.